What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're gonna love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Welcome back to Top Bins, the show, bringing you all the action from England and Italy, SerieA, and Premier League. I'm your host, Matt, joined by my co-host, Dom. Dom, how are you tonight?
I'm good, man. Good. Feeling good. How about you?
You know, personally, fine. I'm doing good. Sports-wise, bad.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
It has not been a great week and a half for either one of us on the Liverpool and Milan side, which we will get to. But before we get into like the main crux of the show, we did an exercise a few months ago now, back in October, which I wanted to revisit because we're sort of have enough data points to really maybe have a discussion about this, and I wanted to at least bring it back up and just see like our progress. For those that weren't around or maybe just need refreshing, we did a fantasy draft of teams in both the Premier League and Serie A. We each picked 10 teams. We took the standings from as they were. This was October 5th, I believe, and just bracketed them by 5 and took one team from each bracket until there was none left, kind of alternated orders. Here's the teams that we each had. Dom, you had Arsenal, Spurs, Brighton, Liverpool, Brentford, Leeds, Bournemouth, Everton, Wolves, West Ham, and I had the rest in the Premier League. I think people can fill in the teams that I had. In Italy, I had Atalanta, Lazio, Milan, Inter, Fiorentina, Sassuolo, Empoli, Lecce, Bologna, and Monza. Again, they can fill in. You had Napoli, which was a great pick. So I just wanted to revisit, kind of how some teams have fared since then. Again, it's been a long while. And I tallied up our point totals to see, because we wanted to make this a little competitive. And there's still time for the rest of the season for these numbers to change. But
Competitive.
it's still competitive. These things can change. So in the Premier League, our cumulative numbers, so I just did them from that date until now, when we picked those teams and how they've performed since then. Dom, your teams that you selected have accumulated 148 points, which is pretty good. I mean, that's a good number.
Solid.
It's a solid number. My teams accumulated 187 points since that total. So the big ones, two teams that were bottom of the table that I ended up picking, Nottingham Forest and Leicester City, both picked up 16 points in that time. Actually really cleaned up on the bottom 5 here, with Aston Villa, Crystal Palace with 18 and 16 points since then. For the most part, the big get for me though, and the best team in England since then, and this is why I like this exercise, because it gives us kind of a more bracketed view of the season. Newcastle United with 30 points. This was in early October. This was game week 9, I believe. They've been the best performing team in the Premier League. Some of your highlights, you had Arsenal, who've had 29 points in that time. Obviously, still the league leaders and have looked very, very strong. You had Liverpool and Brentford, two teams that have performed well. And Brighton, you picked up Brighton, who have done pretty well, remained pretty steady. They've had 17 points since early October under De Zerbi. Now, they had a managerial change that I don't know necessarily foresaw coming at that point. So you've remained constant. Any like big takeaways from England in that time period, or?
Yeah, I just got every single relegation squad imaginable.
Dom did end up with
not
Leeds,
working
Bournemouth,
out.
and Everton. Yeah.
I also have West Ham, who
West
I thought
Ham.
was going to be performing much, much better than they are this year. So, you win some, you lose some. You got to steal with Newcastle, man. I'm jealous of that so much. I still have a chance. I'm hoping some of these teams can turn it around, but it's not looking good for your boy.
There's plenty of time for this to change. There's still so many games left. We're halfway through. I also had Manchester United, which I really hate that this pick is turning out so well for me, but it's been a thing. We'll talk about them when we get into more of the show. But they drew today against Crystal Palace 1-1. But for the most part, have really turned it on in terms of performances over the last few weeks, and have started to turn their form into much more consistent shape. Which we've talked about on the show. But yeah, they've had 26 points since that time period. So it's good. It's fun to kind of look back and see where these teams were now and where they were then. I remember picking Manchester City first. I had the first pick and thinking that was a great pick, and I should have just stuck with Arsenal. In hindsight, I should have just kept on with Arsenal, but I still have a lot of hope that they can maybe make this a more interesting title challenge. Erling Haaland gets back into form. Let's move to Italy, where it's closer. I think
Slightly.
there's there's still a lot left to be determined in Italy, and I think you could see any of these teams kind of go on a run and pick up points for us. So, Dom, your team's accumulated 137 points. Now, Italy has played a game less or 2 games less, depending on the team, than the Premier League. And my teams have accumulated 166 points. So both of us with some good returns so far. Your top pick, though, and it is a great choice, Napoli. 30 points since then. They've just looked like the team to beat and have not really let up in any meaningful way. Some other highlights for you. You also had Juventus, who went on a fantastic run almost right after we did this exercise. And since then have looked a transformed side. Highlights for me, I picked up Milan, which was great, and Inter. Both teams I really felt like could go on strong runs, and teams like Empoli and Lecce, Bologna, which were in Monza, who were near the bottom of the table, have picked up form. A lot of those guys picking up 15, 14, 16, 17 points. Point totals that typically would probably find you more in the top half of the table, maybe European spots. That's where I think I did a lot of my best work in this. I'm sorry, Dom. Hellas Verona only picking up 4 points since early October.
It's sad.
That's not your fault. I don't want you to take the blame for that. But that is a tough scene.
Listen, the key to winning this competition and this exercise is to clean up at the bottom half of the table, and you're doing that right now. So, my hat's off to you.
I am the slumlord. I am the Monopoly, the maroon and light blue spots on the do not pass on the pass go section. You gotta clean up those $400, $600. They really add up. So yeah, looking forward to see how that shapes up for the rest of the year. And I think we can start from there into the discussion of some of the games this week. Because we had Napoli, Juventus. Napoli and Juventus have been the 2 best teams in Italy for the past 2 months. Napoli, the best team pretty much since the start of the season, and one of the best teams in Europe. I was really looking forward to this game. I was so excited to watch it. It did not disappoint in terms of entertainment. Maybe in terms of overall competitiveness, it disappointed because Napoli just blew the doors off Juventus, which is not typical of this matchup. Even when these teams were sort of dueling again for the title, they were always really close. We've had a lot of late winners in this matchup, 87th minute, 90 plus minute types of goals that have really changed the complexion of title challenges, all that stuff. This one was not that. It was a total domination by Napoli, and I felt like at no point did I really feel Juventus was in this. It just felt like they got KO'd pretty early. Napoli, it was a lot of what we've seen from them, and a lot of what I think has brought us a lot of joy with this team. In terms of just pure entertainment, great attacking, displays. Kvaratskhelia, just another really good performance. Osimhen, of course, one of the top scorers in Europe, and it has looked fantastic. But after you go into to halftime and it's 2-1. Juventus had this slight break. They get a Di Maria goal, and it feels like maybe they can find their way back into the game. That's where it felt its most entertaining. But after the break, Napoli applied the gas and did not let up, and it never really felt like Juventus had much of a chance.
No, I mean, Spalletti has these guys playing crazy right now. when Juventus started letting the game get away from them, they started turning the ball over way too much. I mean, and Napoli is just a great pressing team. Yeah, like you said, Osimhen's one of the best in the world. He just makes things happen. Same thing with Kvaratskhelia. If you don't know how to say his last name, you do now. Like, that man has just been putting on game after game after game in the league, and there's no stopping these guys right now. Juventus, very sloppy, very, very sloppy.
It was the most unmotivated and disorganized I think I've ever seen Juventus in a game like this. This was such an atypical Juventus performance in a big game like this. They can lose a game like this, sure. It's very rare, and especially the way that they've played this season. This is, you could have told me Napoli could win this game, and I totally believe that, and that's what I felt going into the match, that it would be like a 2-1 win, something like that. But just the manner in which they were undone defensively. The third goal, Kvara's pass to Osimhen is like beautiful. It just puts it on an absolute dime. But it's splitting the defense in a way that it shouldn't happen, like the disorganization. Bremer gives the ball away, and it turns into a goal. He did not have a great performance. But, Juventus coming into this game had only conceded 7 goals in the league. They almost doubled their goal total in one game. And then it's just, again, it's just not what you think of in Juventus in these big games. And, of course, they haven't been, at, like, the mid-2010s level of, like, domestic dominance. But they have been a good team that's been hard to break down this year, and it just seemed no problem at times for Napoli. And it's a huge statement from Napoli, too, because I think the narrative about them, they lose to Inter, and they even had a kind of, it was after the Juventus game, but they had an underwhelming performance against Cremonese in the Coppa Italia. But, I think the narrative started to turn a little bit about Napoli, that maybe, Spalletti teams in the past have faltered in the second half of the season. And maybe this would be the case for them. It did not feel that way. In fact, in many ways, this felt a little bit like a coronation. You could even see it in the celebration of some of the players, that they really felt like some pressure relieved from this game, and that this was it felt like a huge statement from Napoli.
These guys love playing with each other. You can see it. I mean, and you can tell they work for each other on the field. Their pressing is so good. When you have that kind of energy with a team, they're bound to do great things. So, I think that I agree that a bunch of pressure has been lifted off of their shoulders. They can just kind of sit back and just play every single game. They know they're the best. I've been meaning to ask you. I saw this online. Who do you think is the better signing for Napoli for the season, Kim Min-jae or Kvaratskhelia?
Kim Min-jae is gonna get undervalued because of just obviously how good Kvara has been. It is Kvara. I saw a similar poll. It was like, who's been the signing of the season in SerieA, and it's like you kind of have to ask that question without, like, besides Kvaratskhelia, who is the signing of the season? It's just, he's so obviously the signing of the season that it's almost like moot, because when you just consider like his profile, the price, and how good he's been, he has to be the answer. Kim Min-jae, though, you're totally right to give attention to, because he has been fantastic. Napoli have a great defensive record in the league, only 14 goals conceded, and have really limited opponents. He's been such a great physical threat too. Just has great positioning, great awareness, just so many tools in his bag defensively. And honestly, it's shocking because they really have not even missed Koulibaly. Like, he has just slotted in so well, and I don't think anyone has even noticed that he's been gone. So he's been terrific. But yeah, it's going to be Kvara. There's really no argument for it.
Fair enough.
7 assists on the season, and 7 goals. So. Yeah, it's
so good.
I mean, it's like Berardi numbers, like, honestly, like, it's just, but imagine Berardi would have cost you, I don't know, like 40, 50 million, and Kvara did not cost an a true fraction. People say that, but this is like a true fraction of the price, like truly on super sale.
Man, he's doing it with a team like Napoli. I mean, they're just running the league. It's crazy. And you pair him with a striker like Victor Osimhen, he gets so creative. He can play the ball in. Like, when he cuts inside, he's not always looking to shoot. He'll make that little dink over the top, like you said, for what was that, the third goal?
Yeah, the third goal, the pass from Kvaratskhelia
Cuts
was
inside
just like
over the top.
unreal.
It's beautiful, man. Kvaratskhelia is absolutely ridiculous, man.
Yeah, they've been probably the best team to watch in Italy and maybe even in Europe. I mean, might have to talk about this team in terms of Champions League hopes. Honestly, I mean, they've been that good that I think you have to at least maybe start entertaining that discussion.
I think some people forget they ran their table. They ran their group, right? Like,
no, Liverpool, the only team to beat them until Inter did. So that's Liverpool this season. They just you gotta love it or cry, whatever you want to do. Elsewhere in Italy, Napoli extended their lead, obviously, by beating Juventus, but they also got a little favor from Lecce, who had a draw against Milan, which was a frustrating result. It felt like Milan might pull it back in the end. Ultimately, weren't able to come up with a third goal to get the ultimate result. But yeah, I mean, it obviously compounds too, because today we had Supercoppa, Inter 3, Milan 0. Never felt like Milan got into this game, if I'm being honest. And, it's kind of the same as the Lecce game, too. We have two pretty early goals, and it's just, against a team like Lecce, you can crawl yourself back into that situation and find maybe the third goal and get the good result. But against a team like Inter, it's always going to be hard, against their quality to come back from a defeat like that or a deficit.
Yeah, it seems like the center backs have like a bit of a synergy issue right now. Like in the Lecce game, Kalulu made an error that led to a goal. There's an own goal going on, right? In this game, Kjaer was so far up on the up the field to lead to Dzeko's goal, leaving Tonali to play that, and it's just not looking good. They're getting chances. They're getting chances in the attack, but I think that there's a major issue with the back line. Not having Mike Maignan is an issue. I mean, they need to figure it out. There's a lot of pressure on them now from the fans. Mr. CDK, it's not working out right now. And that pains me to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a run of just like drab results from Milan, to be honest. They only one win since the return of action. That was against Salernitana, and it wasn't exactly the first half was very dominant, but they gave up a little bit of momentum in the second half. 2-2 draw against Roma. They collapsed late there. Roma get a late equalizer.
It's been downhill since then.
They lost to Torino in the Coppa Italia. The draw against Lecce. Now again losing in the Super Cup. It's almost interesting because they're almost mirroring in some ways Inter's sort of slip up in the middle of the season last year, which kind of hurt their title chances. But it also wouldn't shock me if they do what Inter did too and just return with like 8 or 9 wins in a row. They have that in their bag for sure. I do agree that it's been frustrating seeing them at the return because we've seen like flashes of their former selves or their potential title winning selves. But it has been compounded by some bad errors. I'll say this: Inter, I think Napoli have been great. I think Napoli and Inter are the two best like any given match day teams in SerieA, where I feel that just like Napoli can, Inter can beat any team, and they did beat Napoli, and I think they had the best performance against Napoli of anyone this season, in that win. Inter are just that good of a team, and they have that much quality that in one singular game, they can win and win handedly. They just have, but it's been consistency with them has been the issue in terms of like their league performance. But, for like knockout competitions, things like that, Inter are a very dangerous team because on one night, they can give you a really, really special performance.
Inzaghi prepares his team well. His game planning for specific teams. It didn't help when Milan plays a guy like Macias, who isn't going to track back as much. He doesn't have the same kind of energy to match DiMarco's. And DiMarco just absolutely torched that entire left side of the field for Inter. And he was a difference maker for Inter. I mean, you pair that with the way Edin Dzeko's been playing for them. They came out that night or today and easily won that. I mean, Inzaghi had the energy match down the sides. The fullbacks are going all the way down the field. The crosses are coming in. They put pressure on Milan. and it was tough for Milan to get a counter. You get unlucky. It's a tough loss. They need to turn it around, Milan. But all credit to Inter on that win. They played a great game.
Yeah, Inter, their losses have really only come in like big games this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like they largely speaking have been, a good team against like the mid-table teams and the bottom teams. But going back, their last loss in the league is November against Juventus, like early November. But then you go to Roma, Udinese, who in mid-September were a team that was in like the top 4, top 5 of Italy. They lost to Milan in the derby early September, and to Lazio at the start of the season. But for large parts of this year, and especially now, they've been on a nice run of form and a nice run of fixtures, and it's all about maintaining that consistency. They almost dropped out of the Coppa Italia to Parma, but they reel it back in. And again, too, they have another trophy to their name. Obviously, they haven't dominated domestically, but they have won a lot, and they have had these big moments and trophies now, which they can hold on to and lay claim to. And I think we've seen this be really important for momentum. And Napoli are going to take a lot of catching. They're 10 points clear of Inter, 9 points clear of Milan. That's a big mountain to climb. It's not inconceivable that they could, but if Inter can they've shown that they can beat Napoli in a one-off game. That's always going to be important as you get down to it, and it's so far away, it's hard to talk about. But the end of the season, Napoli and Inter play on the third to last match day. They play May 21st. Is it like crazy that could be, is it so impossible that that's like a potential title decider? I don't think so. That could definitely, you could tell me those teams are within like 4 points of each other, and that
could be a 3-team race.
That could be. I mean, Juventus and Milan play on the penultimate match week, this year. That could be an absolutely massive game. Like we have and again, it's so far away, it's hard to project. But you have the capacity for the end of the season in SerieA to be really, really exciting. It's going to take Napoli not being so good, and having to drop some games, and everyone else have to be really, really consistent on the end of the season, which I find maybe hard to believe is going to happen. I just think Napoli, you get over like the mental break of like beating this Juventus team and, how much they've terrorized them. So many of these players haven't been around for those games. It's still, I think there's that general anxiety you might get where you might, drop some games and start to get a little uncomfortable. I would be pretty surprised if people are able to catch up to Napoli. I just think they've really turned a corner mentally for me to think that they're just going to win this title, and that's going to be all she wrote.
Yeah. Shall we talk about England?
Shall we talk about England? We had some great games over the weekend. Manchester United, Manchester City, Spurs, Arsenal. We'll start with United and City. Controversial game. City go 1-0 up through Jack Grealish. I'm glad, their £100 million signing finally, starting to put on some results and some goals for them. That's really cool. It must be nice to be able to spend that kind of money on someone and get like 7 goals out of him. And it's like, whatever. Controversial goal for Bruno Fernandes's equalizer. Because
what do you think about that?
Marcus Rashford so clearly interferes with play. This is me taking all bias off. He so obviously interferes with that play, and he's in an offside position. So clearly does.
Did Akanji stop chasing him? Like he thought it was going to get called offside. Rashford slows up, so he slows up.
He was shaping his foot to shoot the ball. Like Ederson has to adjust his body because he thinks he's about to shoot, and then Bruno Fernandes just overtakes him and score. It's insane. It's a terrible interpretation of the rule to me, because the rule is that if they're interfering with the play. He so obviously is. Mm-hmm. Everything about the defender's position, everything about Ederson's position is because of Marcus Rashford. And the fact that he was running onto the ball, that he did not, I don't know that he knew that he was offside. And if it wasn't for Bruno Fernandes calling him off the ball, like he's taking a shot there.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately the fulcrum of this game too, because like a minute and a half later, after the equalizing goal, Rashford is onside this time for our Garnacho a pass and scores, and it's 2-1, and United go on the win. I thought this was a very boring first half, just about the game as a whole. It was very sloppy. I saw tons of misplaced passes on both sides. I can't tell you how many passes just went very obviously to the opposition or out of bounds, just mishit. It was uncharacteristically so, because Manchester City are such a clean technical team, like able to retain possession so well. Manchester United have been in such good form, and part of it has also been their midfield. Eriksen was the standout player for this game for me. Just absolutely ran everything, just so involved. For me, it was my personal man of the match. I just thought he was great, just involved in so much of the build-up. For Manchester City, I mean, it's a frustrating result, and a big result too in terms of like the title, because you're really giving up ground to Arsenal now. But they just lost, I think, their grip on the game, which is very unlike them. It's not a typical like result for them. They'll lose games, and Manchester United have, even when City have been really really good and hitting mid to high 90s, have dropped a game against Manchester United. That's not inconceivable. I think it's the manner in which they did, which was unusual to see. Erling Haaland was pretty isolated in this game, never really had a ton of chances. That's going to happen with Haaland. I think some people have really overblown like his involvement and his role within the team and all this. He's not the type. He's not a Harry Kane, right? Where even when things aren't going for him goal scoring, he's going to drop deep and be super involved and build up. He was dropping deep in this game, but he's just not that type of player. He's a service striker. He's going to be in and around the box and scoring 21 goals already at a halfway point of the season. It's just weird that we're like nitpicking a player that is so obviously like a very, very elite goal scorer. But it does, I think, bring up questions too about the balance of this team and maybe finding their form, and that they've just been inconsistent in moments, and defensively have not been the team either that we're used to seeing from them. Like they have been defensively very available and vulnerable, and I think that's a concern for Champions League, because that's like the last thing for this team to win, which they have not been able to capture. They obviously had a big collapse against Madrid, in last season's Champions League, but I just don't know where they go from here. I think it's they kind of have to do a little bit of soul searching, which should worry teams, because I'll tell you this, like, I know I keep saying it, but it's just like, if there's a team to win like 12 or 13 straight, it is City. It just is. It's why it's so hard for me to kind of really back Arsenal all the way, although this weekend was a big step for me in really believing that. But I've just seen it so many times that this City team can rattle off wins, even when they've looked really inconsistent and poor. They figure it out and click. But I will say this season does feel a little different for them. It does feel, and we've seen that every 2 or 3 seasons for them, even under Pep. You kind of have, it's very hard to win and win and win and win and win and not have one year where you dip in performances, kind of recapture your form maybe the next season and be back to your levels. And maybe that's just the year that City are going to have.
I think City had a better chance at the end of the game to possibly tie it if Grealish would have actually like played the ball off to De Bruyne. De Bruyne had so much space, he could have picked out a pass or done something to get a shot off, and I think it was just better than the decision that Grealish made. I don't know what was with this starting lineup with Erik ten Hag. I'll tell you this about Manchester United: it seems like the man's playing fucking FIFA 21 out here. He's got Varane and a fullback at center backs.
Luke Shaw's like conversion, like his Maldini conversion to center back has been like the story of like the kind of the rebirth of United, over the last few weeks, especially like playing centrally and how good he's looked. And you got Malacia, and
I think the standout for them is what's his name, Casemiro.
Yeah,
I think he's just been so good for them.
Who tragically, and unless you're an Arsenal fan, and you will say happily, is going to miss the Arsenal game this Sunday because he picked up a yellow card today against Crystal Palace, which is a big suspension. I mean, that's a big loss in a game like that. Casemiro has been a huge anchor in midfield for them. He's so good at breaking up play and distributing the ball, and has been. I think it's no surprise and no secret that since he's really come into the team and had consistent minutes, that this team has looked a lot better. I think once he started to find his feet and, just get those like solid minutes and get some rhythm within this team. Like Manchester United looked very good. Like he's one of the best, holding midfielders, of the last decade. So, that's always nice when you when you have that on your team. I mean, he's just a very, very good player. So yeah, it's been fun. Manchester United obviously at least whispering their name into the title race potentially. They're going to have to make up a lot of ground. They could this Sunday. It's a huge matchup, historic matchup too. These two teams have a ton of history within the Premier League and tons of great games over the years, especially some of those early 2000s hits. Absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to that. Speaking of hatred and rivalry.
This is nuts.
There's a lot to unpack here. Spurs 0, Arsenal 2 in one of the more, for me, like lopsided performances. The first half especially was brutal. I think if I'm a Spurs fan, this is a TV off at halftime type of moment. I don't know how you come back to the television screen for this one. Hugo Lloris with, to call it a howler is honestly, I think a compliment. I think that's like doing him a favor by just calling it a. It's one of the worst goalkeeping errors I've ever seen in my life, and I'm really not exaggerating. I think it's absolutely inexcusable. I know that he has that capacity. Like Lloris has done this in the past. It's not that unusual for him to kind of have these like bigger mistakes and things like that. But Christ alive, you can just feel the momentum just leave Spurs, and it felt like it could have been 3 or 4 at halftime for Arsenal, and it really wouldn't have been shocking. But Spurs just completely out of it. For Arsenal, it's a huge statement though, and I think speaks so much to their growth over the last 7 months, because it's easy to forget that Arsenal went to Spurs needing a win, to stay alive in the Champions League race, and had a terrible performance. They have a red card in that game, and it just felt like emotionally, mature-wise, all of it, they just did not have what it took in that moment to navigate a game like that and get the result they needed. And then they come in with a ton of pressure within this game, knowing already that they have the chance to really extend their lead at the top of the table. And it's easy to forget that this is such a young team, and they handled it with grace and maturity and just great play. And I think that really speaks to their credentials as a potential title winner this year, because these are the types of games that you build that championship from, and I think this could be, this really could be like a game that is on the highlight reel for Arsenal fans at the end of the season. I can remember when Liverpool won the title, beating Manchester United at home 2-0 was that was the moment. That was the moment where it's we're doing this. It really felt, and that was different because it was a 15-point lead at that time or whatever. But there are moments where it becomes very real to you as a fan, as a supporter, where it's you really do start to believe now, that. Now they still have to play. They still have to play City twice. In the second half of the season, they still have hurdles to cover. But it's hard to not start to get a little bit of ambition, I think.
Yeah, you could see it. They're really riling up crowds. What was all this? What, Ramsdale kissed the badge and Spurs fans got mad?
Well, the Spurs fan comes out of the stands to kick Aaron Ramsdale. By the way,
wasn't this all because he kissed the badge or something?
He was Ramsdale's kind of known for giving it to the fans a little bit and being a little bit, he kind of winds them up.
He gets it all game,
which is fine. Yeah, because goalkeepers get it probably the worst out of anyone. Because they're just for 45 to 50 minutes of the game, they're just standing there with nothing to do. So they get the abuse at them a lot. Richarlison and him were arguing about something. Richarlison and Ramsdale was going back to his net to get his stuff, and a fan leaps down the steps and jumps onto the field and kicks him and then runs back up. The guy was 35, by the way. You think of something irrational and dumb like that as it's a teenager. It's something really stupid. But I can remember a few years ago, someone ran onto the field and punched Jack Grealish when he was still at Aston Villa, when he was playing Birmingham City. And I remember that. That guy was in his 30s or something too. It's just, you always kind of assume it's a 16, 17-year-old where it's they're just very impulsive, a very dumb thing to do, and you deserve to be punished for it. But it's they're also a teenager. But it's even worse when it's you're an adult. You should
Listen,
You deserve to go to jail. Like I'm not part of like the lock 'em up crowd, but it's like I think you should actually spend like a solid month in jail and like think about what you just did.
Football hooliganism has no age cap in England. They do that shit for life.
I mean, you're so right. I guess it's just to me that's just such a I'm speechless. Yeah. I can't imagine in my life doing that. I can't imagine thinking you're gonna get away with it either.
I think it's hilarious that the camera was on him the whole time, and he sat behind his two buddies with his mask up, thinking that if he waited there long enough, the camera's gonna go away from him, and it just stuck on him the whole time as he left.
In like one of the newest stadiums on planet Earth with like the most high the most high profile game of like the season in the English calendar pretty much. It's like there are like maybe 3 or 4 other games. It's like Liverpool Manchester United like the only other game I think that is like has the same kind of build up and atmosphere and cameras that this does, and it's like it's bizarre.
This man's going to tell his future kids, if he has any, this story. That's why he did it, for a story.
God bless them. Well, he can have fun telling his boss this story for why he's going to jail for a month. And I mean, God bless the person that has children with them, because good luck. We got great stuff coming up this weekend, though. Liverpool Chelsea this Saturday, looking great. Just 2 of the worst teams I've ever seen in my life duking it out. I mean, what more do you want? As we already mentioned, Arsenal, Manchester United. Really looking forward to that one. I mean, that's going to be a great game. I really do think so, even though we're not going to have Casemiro for it. But a lot on the line there, of course. An underrated game, too, West Ham against Everton. This is a huge game in terms of relegation. Everton lost against Southampton last weekend, and that bottom of the table is really starting to get tight. And this is a huge match that, again, you could look back at the end of the season and take a lot of inspiration from if you maybe survive relegation. It might be because of this game. Who knows? David Moyes obviously like under a lot of pressure to get some results out of this team, and there could be managerial change. Who knows? There could even be managerial change for Frank Lampard and Everton. But either way, it's not great. Not great scenes after the Everton game this weekend either. Like players being chased down in their car, and the board didn't show up for the game because they cited that there was a legitimate threat to like their safety. Yet the police said that they got none of that. So I don't know if there was like some lying there and they just didn't want to like face the fans or what. But
somebody come up to them like in person and like tell him that once.
Well, they're like Everton's like security team was the one that like vetted this and said like there was a credible threat, but like the Merseyside police did not get that report, so like they were like, well, no one told us, like no one told us about this. So, and then like there was a story about like one of the chairmen like being put in like a headlock or something that like they reported that like ended up not being true. It got very messy. All this to say, the situation at Everton is not great. Things are not going well. So looking forward to seeing them in West Ham. David Moyes with the chance to really send Everton into a spiral. In Italy, we've got some good matches too. I think probably the highlight of the weekend, Juventus against Atalanta. We saw some vintage Atalanta 8-2 over the weekend. More like the Atalanta I think a lot of us have associated with over the last few years. No big like marquee matches, I wouldn't say. This weekend, next Tuesday, get Lazio Milan. That's obviously a big one. But Napoli face Salernitana. We'll see. Maybe if the boys from Salerno have a nice little surprise for them. Maybe a way of getting a big result. Udinese, Sampdoria. Sampdoria obviously trying to climb out of the basement of SerieA, but not as many like marquee fixtures as you have in England. Looking forward to that. It's going to be a great weekend of action, I'm sure. We'll be back next week to wrap it up for you. Tom, anything to say before we get out of here?
Don't sleep on that Monza Sassuolo game. Monza's been looking strong. I mean, and you got the Galani reactions in the crowd again. It's a beautiful thing for SerieA. So they've been playing well. They're entertaining to watch, man. So if you're looking for that like kind of one-off like obscure game to watch for the week, put that one on. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, Monza have been very good. Maybe even a little bit quietly, which is hilarious because
Hmm.
Berlusconi is like the opposite of quiet. But like the team themselves, like their performances, like this is a team that might finish like mid-table.
Yeah.
Might finish in like ninth, eighth. In their first season back in Serie A. I mean, I know that they've had obviously a lot of resources pumped into the club, a lot of money, and a lot of players that most promoted teams would obviously not have access to. But still, you have to go out there and actually perform well. We've seen teams like get this injection of players and money and not do anything with it. So I don't want to give them too much credit, because it's like you kind of had the sliders fixed to easy for you a little bit, but at the same time you still have to go out and get the results, which they have done, and they've actually been entertaining to watch. They had a really fun game against Cremonese over the weekend, so I agree. Monza and Sassuolo, that's a pretty fun game. Sassuolo, you know, they've got a decent buffer, with the relegation zone, but little little worrisome to be sitting at 17th.
Listen, that's what Galani and Berlusconi do, man. They pump money into a club, whatever money they can find, whatever money they can get, just pump money into a club. Buy a lot of Italians. That's what they do, and then expect them to win. So credit to them.
Yeah.
Domenico Berardi's next.
Yeah, pumping is definitely one of Berlusconi's one of his traits for sure.
All right, and with that,
we're gonna get out of here before I get a cease and desist from Silvio Berlusconi, and he's got a lot more money than I do, and a lot more friends in low places than I do. So we'll be back next week to wrap up all this action. Tons of games to look forward to. Until then, stay safe and enjoy. We'll see you next time.